to what extent am I supposed to take this information and pass it on? That's also a lot of what the Mint formula concept is about. There are several aspects to the Mint analogy, but one of them is the pristine version of, because mint is also an adjective that you use in like a mint condition of something. Like I bought this car. It's from 1956, but it stands in its mint condition, which means it looks and is perceived exactly as it was when it was originally came out. And that sort of analogy of being able to take a message in its mint condition of the very first person that conveyed this message, can we pass on? Can we keep passing on this communication? Can we keep communicating this message in its mint condition so that every new person that hears this will understand it exactly in the same way as the person that said it in the first way intended it? Welcome back to another conversation here with my friend Arun Prakash. We're talking about communication, primarily in the workplace, corporate communication. We're having these little conversations based on some articles that I have written. And as usual, Arun, you are the interviewer. You've got the questions lined up. So hit me.
Sure. After reading Martin's second article, which talks about communication for individual sustainability, the Mint formula, I have a couple of questions, Martin, which is, what strategies can individuals and organizations employ to ensure that the illusion of communication doesn't hinder genuine engagement?
Well, there's quite a few things and techniques that you can both use on a personal level, but also that I actually feel that something like corporations could incorporate in some ways. It can be done in different ways. Active listening, to me, again, active listening is one of those things that has become awfully popular in the corporate world in the last couple of years, right? It's something like that. Everybody wants to say that, oh yeah, we're totally doing active listening. It's part of like emotional intelligence, that whole svada of popular things that you can say that our company is on board with this. And active listening is a part of that, but it's not necessarily that easily done. There are a few direct things that you can do, both to sort of keep you in the moment when you're in a conversation, if you're facilitating and you're listening to someone. And one is, I used to do some exercises a long time ago where you would have two people and I would say, okay, now I'm going to tell you a story. It's going to be about a minute long. At the end of that story, the person sitting next to you, you're going to tell my story to that person. And that person has to believe it as if it's your story. Wow. As if it's you that it happened to. Meaning, first of all, you have to pay enough attention to me telling the story that you could retell it precisely with details, with like who said what, like what was the color of the car, like the whole thing. And if you listen with that in mind, that I actually have to be able to retell this whole thing as if it's my own narrative or my own presentation, then it's like you switch into a different gear in terms of how much you're paying attention to what the other person is saying. Because if you're just sitting there and you're just saying, well, I'm basically just supposed to be here. You know, I'm a facilitator, I'm an interviewer. Maybe I have to give a few comments, but basically what this clever guy is saying is not that important to you. You just need to ask the questions. And then it's really easy to just drift off. You start thinking about, grocery shopping on the way home and what are you otherwise going to do today? And thoughts wander. But that happens if you subconsciously know that you can allow yourself to do that. And if you're in a different position where you know that I'm going to have to, or let's say your manager in your company comes in on a Wednesday and say, I was supposed to do this presentation tomorrow for the group. I can't be there tomorrow. So I'm going to walk you through it and you're going to do the presentation for me. And you go like, damn, okay, that's not my, it's not my responsibility to give that presentation. It was supposed to be managerial. B, you might have a specified role in the team where what the presentation is about is not really your key area of expertise. C, yada, yada, yada. We can go on and on and on. But the point is that if that was the case, and he says, I'm just going to walk you through it in 10 minutes, you're going to pay attention on a whole different level because you know that tomorrow when you're there, it's your ass. It's you who are going to look like an idiot in front of the rest of the team if you were not paying attention and listening and getting all the detail and writing down and stuff like that so that you can retell and pass on that presentation the next day with equal amount of technical precision, not suddenly saying wrong things that were different from what your manager was saying, getting the facts wrong and all of that. That in itself will make you pay attention, will make you listen on a whole different level. And I've used that several times when especially if I've been sort of in conversations with people where I feel like it would be good for me to make a connection with this person. It would be good for me to know this person. Then I know also that the more I pay attention, the more I remember of what he's saying, the stronger the connection will be. Because the next time I talk to that person, if I remember and I can say, oh yeah, I remember you told me this and this and this and this, and that made a lot of sense to me, then that will have a big impression. That is a really good way to impress people if you can just restate like everything they ever told you. Not that you never necessarily do that, but that's one way to do it. It's just a mindset of to what extent am I supposed to take this information and pass it on. That's also a lot of what the Mint formula concept is about. There are several aspects to the Mint analogy, but one of them is the pristine version of, because mint is also an adjective that you use in like a mint condition of something. Like I bought this car, it's from 1956, but it stands in its mint condition, which means it looks and is perceived exactly as it was when it was originally came out. And that sort of analogy of being able to take a message in its mint condition of the very first person that conveyed this message. Can we pass on? Can we keep passing on this communication? Can we keep communicating this message in its mint condition so that every new person that hears this will understand it exactly in the same way as the person that said it in the first way intended it? And the trick to that, I feel, is simply allowing yourself to ask the person that you're talking with. Like if you're saying something and someone is listening, then ask that person, would you mind just telling me what I just said? Because I want to check that you understood what I said the way I said it. Not because I don't think you weren't paying attention, but just for my sake. Would you mind telling me what did I just say? That's a technique for me to make sure that I have communicated in reality and not communicated in an illusion of I think I communicated, but actually I don't know. I just said something, but I don't know how it was perceived. And you could do that the other way around, that if you're interviewing something or you're facilitating, then allow yourself to say, do you mind if I just try to resume what you just said? Because then you will check whether you were paying attention. You will check whether you were listening. So that's another way to do it.
That's impressive. I think also actively listening plus questioning if in doubt, to seek clarification also helps, I guess. Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, I would add a very important part of active listening is interest, honest interest, which I think is the most overlooked concept in the corporate world, bar none, is interest in the person that you're with. Because active listening is very popular to say that you like to do. It's very easy to say that you are doing it or you are attempting to do it, but it's not necessarily easy to do. And it comes down to, are you really interested in hearing what I said? Are you personally really interested? Or is it just because you know you should listen actively? Because it might do you good. You're supposed to write it down. You're supposed to take notes. You're supposed to do a follow-up. You're supposed to create a takeaway, call to action, whatever it is you want to do as a facilitator. You know you should. But do you really want to? Like, are you really interested? Because if you are interested, you will listen actively. But if you aren't really interested, active listening suddenly becomes labor. It becomes something that you have to concentrate a lot to do, and then suddenly it becomes a lot more difficult to do than what it had to be. So you could ask yourself, how interested am I really in this exchange?
Is it a battle of being interested, or is it an obligation that I have to do it? And that really sets the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've come across a lot of times where if I don't understand some terminologies, I easily get this not interested, and it's really hard to come back to the stage I was in. Maybe it's like, this is too much. Maybe it's a stupid question that I should ask him. Maybe he thinks that I'm credible enough, but if I ask this question to him, then it can make him feel like I'm a dumb person sitting in front of him and trying to explain the whole thing from scratch. But that's another thing. But I get the idea. Genuinely paying interest to one's speech, and also kind to put myself from their perspective, and yeah.
And it's always about how you introduce something like that, like how you put it on the table. Not just start retailing what people think and then they get sort of weird about why are you saying what I just said, but that you put it on the table first. Like, if you don't mind, I just like to try and reiterate what you just said, just for my sake. So just bear with me, because then you sort of laid out that it's a personal need that you have. It's not because, that you didn't understand or you weren't paying attention or you thought that what they said was stupid or anything. So it's all usually a matter of just how you put the cards on the table before you ask something.
But it is also polite enough to tell that you wanted to make sure that you understood the right way.
Absolutely.
And they will be happy to actually do that, because you actually set the scene that I'm going to do it for my own goodness and our own sake.
Yeah.
So it does help both the parties, and not to follow up. What did you just said in the meeting room? I completely forgot. Sorry, and it's going to piss them off more, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I would argue that anyone would rather hear, yes, I will say this again because it feels like you are really interested in what I said, than getting annoyed the next day at, like, were you not paying attention? Because that's not what I said. Like, so.
I get it. Question number 2 is, can you share a personal or a professional experience where active listening changed the outcome of communication challenges?
Well, yes and no. I might want to. I do remember one company that I was working with from the beginning, not from the beginning, but at some point. And there was a CEO of the company And she had a manager in the team that was below her. And I was talking to this CEO, and she said, I have a problem with this manager because he doesn't speak nicely to his own employees, like the stakeholders, the people in the team, the people on the floor. He doesn't speak nicely to them. And I know he's not aware of that he's being perceived as if he speaks rudely towards them or just inconsiderate or just comes off as if he just doesn't give a shit about what they feel. They're just supposed to do what they're supposed to do. He's not aware of this, but nobody really likes him that much. He's very good at his job. He's very competent in the position. But the problem is that no one wants to go that extra mile for him. They'll do what is their job, what they're being paid for, but they don't want to do anything because he asks them to do it. And it was partly because it was a company that had multiple ethnicities working. There were quite a few South American people working in this company. The manager was Danish. There was a culture clash in terms of how you talk to people and how sort of the interrelationship dynamic. People from another culture, they were just used to sort of interacting on a slightly different level. What was interesting, I then spoke to that manager who actually came to me because of some video that he had seen of me doing something about public speaking and about communication. And I think it was because I said what we talked about earlier. I said, you haven't communicated until you've heard the retelling of your own words ring true to your ears. Meaning that until you've heard someone retell what you said back to you in a satisfactory way where you feel like, yes, that's what I said and that's also what I meant. When you've achieved that, then you've communicated. And this person came back to me, was very interested in that, and he said, he came back to me and said, I feel I can't get anybody to listen. I can't get them to do what I want to do. And so what do I do? And I said, first you have to acknowledge that no one on this planet will do something that they're not fundamentally interested in doing. We are all selfish at the core. Even when we go to work, even if we're being paid handsomely to do our work, we will not do anything unless it on some level serves our own best interests. And you have to acknowledge that that's okay. That type of selfishness is okay because it's very deeply rooted in our humanity, I feel, or at least that's what I've experienced. So you have to acknowledge first that if you want them to do what you say, you have to figure out what makes them interested in doing what you want them to do, when you want them to do it, how you want them to do it. What will make them care about it? What's in it for them? And you have to be willing to spend the time on getting to know them and figuring out what drives these people. That person, that person, that person, that person. Individually, what drives them? What will make that person interested in doing something that I tell that person to do because they would want to do it for me as a person, not just because I'm the senior manager in the team and it's your freaking job to do it. Because you're never getting very far with that. And I worked a little bit with this person and it did make a change because he ultimately understood that, first of all, he had to be willing to look himself in the mirror and see how I think I'm speaking to people is not how it's being perceived. I might think I'm a really good person. I'm just being professional. I know my things. I'm just talking the way I am. But if they think I'm an idiot, I'm an idiot. That's just how it is. In this scenario, that's what I am. So I have to be willing to accept that that's how I'm being perceived. Okay, damn, they think I'm an idiot. How do I work with that? How do I change that perception? A really good place to start would be talk to the people every once in a while. Don't just delegate, throw orders at them and deadlines and criteria and everything that you have to do, project, plans or whatever it might be. Take time to get to know them. Talk to them every once in a while in a lunch break. Have a little fun with them. Tell a joke every once in a while. Ease the tension. Then, little by little, you'll be able to get somewhere.